Well, hello everyone. Welcome back to Adrian's Digital Basement 2. This is a super mini mail call, and you may have noticed it's been a while since I've done any of these. I've just been really busy with life stuff and making some other second channel videos, but stuff has been building up, so I need to kind of dig into that and start opening those packages again, because I never got through the backlog when the last round of super mini mail calls were happening. So let's dig into the packages I got. They're sitting right here on the floor behind me because they're kind of big. All right, this package comes from Massimo in Tennessee. Hi to all my Tennessee viewers. This is, as far as I'm aware, sorry to ruin any kind of surprise, I think this is an old computer monitor of the AT&T variety. And Massimo reached out to me when I was working on the Storic IQ120 terminal, which had the cataract CRT. And at the time, I had done a CRT swap on the terminal, and I was unable to get that working because the CRT wasn't really compatible. Physically it was compatible, but the driver board wasn't able to drive it. And that's when Massimo reached out to me to offer up this, I think an AT&T monitor that might have been a good candidate. I did end up finding a CRT that worked in that terminal, and that's what I ended up swapping in. And I still do have the original cataract screen. And I actually wanted to make a video, and now that the weather's nice, actually we just had a heat wave here the other day, I want to do a video where I try to get that glass off of there so we can see if we can use that CRT. Now, even though I got that terminal working, Massimo offered up this old AT&T monitor, which I think is in pieces, just so I could have it. Maybe I can get this working, or I can reuse the parts for other monitors or whatnot. So let me get this all out of here. There does seem to be a bunch of different parts in this box. All right, here's the monitor, and it's actually Zenith Data Systems. It's not AT&T. Now, what's interesting is from the look of the CRT, I almost think this might be a green phosphor set. I kind of recall the conversation with Massimo, but this was a while ago at this point, that this was a white phosphor CRT. Now, I have my little UV flashlight. This is, what is the wavelength of this? 365 nanometer blacklight flashlight, and I really like these because they don't cast a lot of light. I'm just going to shine it onto the plastic first. If I shine this onto the plastic, it almost looks like nothing's happening there, but it's definitely on the flashlight. And let's turn this and shine it at the CRT. And okay, well, that's kind of curious. Now, in the camera, I can see that's a bit washed out. To my eyes, it's a dark blue color. I don't know what this is trying to convey because I've used this on a whole bunch of CRTs, and typically, I mean, I know it looks almost like a whitish color there, but no, it's just a solid dark blue. Typically, this flashlight on a green CRT will show bright green, and on a white CRT, it will shine bright white. Here's an example of that. This is my Apple IIc monitor, but it's got a white phosphor CRT from a Mac swapped into it, and when I shine the flashlight on it, well, that is, sorry for the lack of focus there. It's basically a grayish white color, and you can tell it's different than this monitor. So that's curious. I don't think I've actually seen this thing show blue like this on any CRT. Okay, so other things that's interesting about this is it's got a 3D printed tilt base. That's curious. Massimo, did you design that? Looks like there's some additional parts that came with it that are wrapped up. Maybe one of these is the base or something. There should be a control here for brightness and contrast. That knob is not there. There is a screw. There are screws. Yeah, the case is not loose. And on the back, we have a 9-pin connector and a power switch. So parts of the guts are in there at least. Looking at the plate on the back, we can see the model number, 14ZDC3. Not really familiar with it. We do have a date for when it was manufactured, but to be honest, I cannot read that. Oh, there it is, 1989. And here's that 3D printed tilt swivel stand. What a freaking fantastic design. It slides well on the base. Feels good, actually, and other than the fact it's not beige, but nothing but a little paint couldn't fix. So this bag was included with it. I wouldn't be surprised if this was part of the original tilt swivel base, and there's a broken clip on this, so this would have been to hold on the original base. This looks like Massimo was trying to get this working at some point and built this connector. And as far as this goes, power maybe? We have an anti-static bag with a PCB inside. This has me wondering if this monitor was part of a type of all-in-one system, maybe a terminal. Zenith Home 88 CPU PCA. That would be the keyboard jack. We have an NEC V40 CPU with the V40 specifically being, I think like an 8186 equivalent type chip, kind of an all-in-one thing for building embedded systems just like this. Western Digital 37C65, I'm pretty sure that would be a floppy drive controller, probably would connect to that. Now these ICs have VADEM or VADEM, I'm not sure how to pronounce that, on them. And the ROM here says copyright VADEM and Zenith, version 1.10. And this certainly has the look of an ISA connector as well. And I'm supposing that this is the video out that goes to that monitor. Although if that's the case, this is definitely a non-standard pinout for normal MDA, CGA type signaling, because those have horizontal vertical sync on the bottom row, and we only have one pin there. So that doesn't really jive with that. Now this harness here appears to be power. Looks like Massimo has labeled it on there. And then from a DRAM perspective, we have 4 256s, and that would mean these are 4 bits wide, 2 chips is 256K. So that means right away we have 1 megabyte there, and there's actually an additional megabyte down here, or am I mistaken? If these are 1 bit wide, that would give this thing 512K of RAM, and if they are 4 bit wide, then that would give this thing 2 megabytes of RAM. Okay, we have another bag here that's got, oh, it's got the deflection yoke in it. So I guess that CRT is more taken apart than I suspected. I'm just giving this an inspection to make sure that these windings are connected, and those two are good. Don't see any issues. And these two definitely are. You can see these are connected, the yellow black wire to this coil that just goes around this part. And the blue and red wire is all of these windings here. And this is for a monochrome monitor because it's got these little magnets here that aren't glued on, which is nice. They're just on these little posts, and you can twist these and correct for geometry issues. And these are the centering rings, so you can move these around to center the entire image up, down, left, right. It's all pretty easy, and because you don't have color to worry about with the color purity or any of those issues, these are so much easier to deal with and swap and align and do all that stuff with it. And then wrapped up in another little package was the driver board, which I'm assuming is for this monitor, and I guess it's just missing its guts inside. This is the typical monochrome display driver board. Flyback transformer. The neck board is oddly extremely complex for a monochrome monitor. I gotta say, I haven't seen one quite with all of this on here. But yeah, we have some transistors, 2 ICs, a lot of passives, and this is, there's the contrast and the brightness control that was from inside the monitor. I could tell it was a double kind of wheeled potentiometer for adjusting either of those controls. I think it looks like it's in pretty good shape though, I must say. Just looking at the main board, nothing seems to be out of the ordinary. Stuff is just sort of bent around a little bit, but that's not an actual problem. What's this? That's just like a ground lead of some kind. Yeah, all the regular potentiometers are there. Yeah, everything kind of looks in good shape. A little bit of glue there, but no corrosion from it on that inductor. Okay, I'm trying to figure out a little bit of information about this thing. It says Zenith Home 88 CPU PCA. Zenith Home 88 brings up this most random stuff on here. I typed in Zenith computer with V40 and this came up, the Eazy PC. Is there a photograph of this? There is not. But it says it's an all-in-one that has either 1 or 2 720K disk drives from July 1987, so that tracks. V40 CPU at 7.16 megahertz. 512K standard with 640K will be external module. Okay, so that means the DRAM that I looked at there was 1 bit wide and 8 of them is 256K. So that matches with this 512. Looks like you can get 20 meg hard drive with a model whatever, and has a 14-inch CRT and CGA graphics. But it looks like it has a 14-inch screen. It generates grayscale display with a warm white phosphor. Warm white. Interesting. Graphics chip supports CGA video with resolution of 64x200, and it's double scanned. So we have a 24 kilohertz monitor. That's very interesting. Would be nicer, sharper text versus CGA on a computer like this. The rear of the system, there's a DE9 and a DB25 parallel port. There's a proprietary option port that's a 64-pin 2-row pin header, and the mouse port is serial. Well, I certainly don't see anything that's a pin header that has 64 pins, but this ISA looking connector, this connector there is definitely 34 pins, that's floppy, and this one's 40 for unknown. There's a floppy drive power connector there, I hadn't noticed that. The CPU is a V40 running a clock speed of 7.16 MHz, but able to be slowed to 4.77 MHz. And like the V20, the V40 is object code compatible, but the V40 includes integrated peripherals that would otherwise require additional circuitry. So that would be like the DMA controller, interrupt controller, things like that. But I'm pretty sure the V40 is more like an 8186, which means those peripherals, which while they're on the XT, they're at different I/O addresses, which makes it not really compatible with IBM PC software. So usually there's some kind of a translation layer you have to have, and you would have a special version of MS-DOS that is compiled to use the 8186 or this V40 processor. And the BIOS used was designed and supplied by this Vadim. A reviewer of this machine reported difficulty running certain applications from floppy disk without the computer freezing, throwing errors, or failing to boot, deeming the Eazy PC not fully IBM PC compatible in his summary of the machine. Well, yeah, because it's got a V40. That's the problem right there. Oh, cool. Okay, there was a link on the Wikipedia article to the review of this machine, so we can see what it actually looks like. There it is. The system is a closed box, so there is no internal options. An Eazy PC is incompatible with all PC expansion cards and internal options. It seems almost anticlimactic to mention it, but the Eazy PC also has no socket for a math coprocessor. So this machine, 1987, was $1,200 for the base model with two 720K floppy drives and 512K RAM. And they tested a version that has the hard drive for $1,600. Now, I don't know if this was price competitive with other PC XT clones at the time, but I have a feeling this probably wasn't, and this didn't sell well because it just wasn't a good machine. And Zenith did sell PC clones, like actual IBM PC clones. So I don't really know what the deal with this one was, other than it's obviously very, very compact. I mean, judging by how small this motherboard is, that box under the monitor couldn't have been very big, more than just big enough to hold the floppy drives. You can't really get a good sense of scale from this photo, although, yeah, it makes sense now actually that the case that the monitor sat on was the bottom of the tilt swivel stand, which is why someone like Massimo or someone else designed and 3D printed the replacement base for the monitor, which is kind of nifty actually. There are the two floppy drives, so it must sit under the motherboard, I suppose. And that's it for the review from InfoWorld. I just noticed the headline, by the way. Eazy a misnomer for a non-expandable machine. Computer for novices costs more and does less than the competitors. What a fail. What a fail. On oldcomputers.net, there is a color photograph of the machine as well. So you can get a little bit of a better look at it. There are those dual floppy drives. Oh, take a look. There's a photograph of the back of the machine. And it does indeed have a double pin header row. So that means, oh, it was swapped. That's why. Also, what we can tell is this 9-pin connector, which I thought might be for CGA or the monitor, is actually, that's just for the mouse. So the connection to the monitor is internal, which is interesting. So this little thing here plugs into what I thought was the Berg power connector, and yes, it has like normal Molex on it, so that's that. And now it makes sense. There's a little double row of pins. And this little adapter that Massimo included probably this was an internal connection that went to the monitor, which is kind of curious now because there is a DE9 on the back of the monitor, but that must have been added as well by Massimo to try to get, well, to try to get this thing working with other stuff. And yes, looking at the cable here, that would go down to the motherboard from the monitor, from the back neck board of the monitor. That was it. That was the connection for the video display signal. And there's a photograph of that extra memory module that plugged into the back of the machine. And I think I've opened up everything from this box, but there's another box that Massimo sent, so there might be more stuff in there, maybe the keyboard and whatever, so I'm gonna have to open that up to look next. Oh, look, there's the inside with the hard drive. Okay, so I wonder if this is an XT IDE hard drive that plugged into that 40-pin header on the motherboard, because the motherboard here has 34 pins for the floppy, and then there's a 40-pin connector there that almost certainly went to the little hard drive. And judging by the fact that this little Molex connector cable harness was here, maybe this was a hard drive version. Yes, you can just make out the little Molex adapter right there. Now, these Western Digital drives were famous for having XT IDE variants, which was not IDE in the conventional sense that we're used to. This was an 8-bit version of IDE, which was common on some systems like this. It really didn't gain much traction. I might have one of these drives, although I vaguely recall that it might be bad and I recycled it. And there's a photograph of the motherboard, the Home 88 CPU board. Oh, and look, excerpts from the manual. Oh, that link doesn't work anymore. And this link here going to mixed collection of obsolete computers. Unfortunately, that doesn't seem to be working at the moment either. I was like looking at the comments on here, and this one was pretty recent from 2025. This was my first computer. I was still able to boot up Red Baron and Police Quest, and they may have been other titles, but those are the ones I had documentation on. I really wish I still had it today. This person says, does anyone know how to open the BIOS setup? I don't think there's a BIOS setup on this thing. There was no battery or NVRAM on here, so almost certainly it's just like all the other XTs where it would kind of auto-configure things. There may be a couple jumpers. Yeah, I just see one jumper, so it might well be that like that was like hard drive enable or not, and that's it. This person says, my first PC, managed to get one recently, an EZ2 and an EZ3, but they both arrived completely trashed. Is there any chance anyone has one available and wants to sell it to me? I bought an EZ3 as my first computer from Montgomery Ward. I loved it for its size and shape, but I didn't use it that much and sold it to my coworker after a month of use. It's funny because whenever these computers come out that are highly compromised, like clearly this one was, if this was your first computer, you still made the best of it and you would try to figure out what software could actually run on it properly, and then you would use it because having a computer was still better than no computer. And unfortunately, companies like Zenith and others sold stuff that just wasn't really compatible and difficult to use. And it's really unfortunate. People probably knew about the Zenith brand, like they had Zenith televisions and other electronics, you know, and they always were really good quality and worked really well. So people thought, oh, it's a computer, I'm going to buy one of these. And if it was sold at Montgomery Ward, it was definitely targeted towards consumers. And they get it home, and then people, for their first machine, they didn't really know any better, that they had better options out there, like PC clones that did way more and were probably cheaper and were fully compatible. I mean, it's too bad in a way that the folks who went and bought these didn't go to Radio Shack and buy Tandy 1000s, because at the time those were out too, and they were a billion times better than this, plus the graphics and sound and color and all those things. But that was what was happening back then. You didn't have the internet to do research, you couldn't rely on the salespeople at the stores. So that's how people ended up with computers like this, unfortunately. And at this point, this stuff is just mainly a big curiosity and maybe a CRT donor. Now, I am slightly curious that maybe we should try to power this thing up, and I can use the RGB to HDMI to connect up to the video output, because it's getting the monitor working will be harder. So we could try to see if this motherboard is even working. I suppose though, before we do that, I should probably open up the other box just to see if there's like more parts of this computer in there. Okay, opening the other box, around the top there was a letter, so let's look at the letter. Probably explains a little bit more about what we're seeing here. Hi Adrian, I've been following your channel for a few years at this point, and I wanted to thank you for all your amazing content and the wonderful way you narrate and explain what you do on camera. I pretty much picked up the hobby of collecting and fixing electronics after I started watching your videos. And here's a package full of a mostly Olivetti AT&T PC boards and cards, and a weird PC 6300 case that I found on eBay a while ago. It appears to be something that was used by AT&T itself, so I really couldn't find any info online. I installed the guts of an M280, the 286 12 megahertz into it, but in the box you should be able to also find all the parts to return it to an original model 24, or that's an Olivetti M24, or the AT&T version, which is the PC 6300. I have fond memories of using Olivetti M24 in the computer labs of my middle school in Italy, and I was very surprised when I realized that so many were sold in the US, which is where I live now, by AT&T. In the box, I've also included the SD2 XTA drive emulator that I put together with my poor SMD soldering skills. It should be flash and everything, but I haven't tried it. Last but not least, a token of my appreciation for my hometown in Italy. I'm not gonna try to pronounce that, yeah, okay, anyways. That's where they made some Italian candies that you have already tried on the channel. I brought this back on my last trip there, and although it's not quite a candy, I hope you enjoy it. Thank you again for all your passion, expertise, hard work that you put in your videos. It really shows and makes them great to watch. Bye from Tennessee, Massimo. P.S. Another package is on its way with some chunks of the Zenith Eazy PC, including the monitor. Okay, well, obviously I opened the packages backwards. I picked them both up at the P.O. box at the same time, so Massimo must have packed this stuff up separately. and then ship them to me together. So, okay, well, we've been looking at all the Eazy PC parts with this stuff. Let's, wow, this is like more Olivetti stuff. That's so cool. Now, side note, there have been a few second channel videos now showing off the Olivetti PC1, which is sort of an all-in-one computer and not the monitor, but, you know, it's a wedge type computer with the keyboard and floppy drive and stuff. I have 2 of those awesome computers. Those were, as far as I'm aware, never sold in the US, and those are things need to be repaired. They're over on my shelves over there, which is my to repair pile. Now, I also have an AT&T 6300, which I've never shown on video because someone local gave it to me and I haven't gotten around to even testing it out. That would be for like a future PC archaeology type video. And they look relatively complete, and I know I need to get to those because they have a NiCad battery in them that does leak. So I've really got to open those up and at least take the battery out and try to neutralize any corrosion that's on there because it might have caused damage. But I have the keyboard, the mouse, and the main computer itself, which is the AT&T version, which is just a rebranded version of the Olivetti M24. It's a 8086 PC, if I recall. But I know Olivetti made a further model that was a 286, a 16-bit, well, the 8086 is also 16-bit, but a 286 machine. I do not know if that was ever sold in the US as a 6300 or another AT&T that is. But it sounds like in the box here, we have some more parts that could go and to maybe fix my 6300 if it is broken, but also a 286 board that might work in there. Let's dig in and take a look. Okay, well, this is kind of interesting. So this is that, I guess, like the 286 version. It's missing a front panel. There's more stuff in the box there. Something just fell inside. But this looks like it would have a hinged front panel of some kind. Very curious. And it looks like inside this box are a bunch of parts. So it was the Olivetti M280. That was the 286 version. And that's where I wonder if AT&T was thinking about releasing that in North America and never got around to it. All right, there's a small little box. And in here, this is definitely one of the drive bay holder things because it has this C and A plastic trim piece here that sticks to the front. That's just like the M24 or the 8086 version where it would say A and B if it were for 2 floppy drives, but some of them had hard drive versions. So that must go inside the computer. Here's that Italian deliciousness, which if I block it, it'll focus on it. It's kind of like a chocolate nut type thing, and it's a cup because it's kind of squishy plastic, so it's got, you know, cream of some kind in there. Ooh, this is probably so good. Okay, this is, I presume, the XT IDE emulator, and I have to say, I had no idea that this was a thing. And it has this little microcontroller board, which is a TC 4.1. And the last thing that was in the box that I have, you know, not inside the computer, but just loose in the box, well, packaged in the box, looks like an XT IDE type hard drive. It's a Western Digital with its sticker removed on the top, so I guess like an OEM kind of thing from 1987. Pretty sure this would potentially work in the Eazy PC. So the same 40-pin connector, and even though you might think, oh, it's just normal IDE, you can just plug in the standard IDE drive, that is not the case. These are specific to only work on XT systems with a very specific controller that would connect the 8-bit ISA bus to the drive. All right, let me try to figure out how to open this computer. It looks like I got a couple screws on the back, a little bit of shaking, and it did open up. Okay, it looks like we have some PCBs wrapped up in aluminum foil and what probably is an extra motherboard. So looking at this first board, this is definitely for the M24 or the AT&T PC 6300. And the reason why is it had normal 8-bit ISA, but then it had an extra connector because remember, it was running an 8086 processor that is 16 bits, full 16 bits on the external side. And this was Olivetti's solution to bring those extra data lines. I think that's the case, at least. I haven't actually used this machine, but this obviously is a RAM expansion board, and, well, you get faster performance if you have 16-bit RAM. So hence this little extra board. So there it is, memory expansion and copyright Olivetti 1984. And this is normal 64 kilobytes DRAM. So 8 of these chips is 64K. So we have 8 chips plus an extra chip for parity, which is very typical. So 64K, 128K, 256K. Board obviously can accommodate up to 384 kilobytes total. Bodge-tastic there, absolutely bodge-tastic. Ah, yes. Look, and here is the M24, the 6300 backplane. So this is the extra 16-bit extensions that I was talking about. It's only used for some boards, like the RAM board we were just looking at. And the main motherboard is actually on the underside of the computer, and it connects via these ribbon cables or little riser things to both of these connectors. So this is on the top side, what you would see when you open the lid of the computer. And just like I opened up the lid of this one, I'll show it in a second, that has 16-bit ISA slots, but this has this earlier version. More bodge-tasticness, but very neat looking bodges, so that's cool. Now the next one, we can see that this is obviously the backplane for another one of these 286 machines. Oh, and I'm noticing that it even has the extra 16-bit extensions for these old cards in addition to 16-bit ISA slots. And what's really strange is that this PC here, it doesn't even have that. So it has the little board that it's connecting that extra extension kind of over my thumb there, but none of the connectors. So it's a different revision of that board. Anyone who's an expert in these Olivetti machines, please let me know what's going on here. What's the difference? Yeah, the board that was in there had this with a ribbon cable that went down, and it was connected to this edge, but the traces just went over here and it was missing that. And look, this has space for 2 of those. So I guess the backplane sticks into this, along with like the one with the slots on it, the ISA slots we're looking at, but then along with another one that is for the main motherboard on the bottom that has the CPU and whatnot. And this has these large lugs here that connect up the power. Okay, this next board, and I would wager that, yeah, this is the video board because we have a 6545 character ROM most likely, and then this large 25-pin connection. This goes to the monitor. This is a 24 kilohertz video board. And the monitor connection on the Olivettis and the AT&T is this 25-pin connector. So this is a 16-bit video board. It's also bodge-tastic, so that's why it's got the high-performance connection there and there, the CRT controller. We will have some DRAM, and there it is right there, 41,416, so 32 kilobytes of DRAM. All right, last card that was inside the machine. This is just a normal Western Digital 16-bit hard drive controller. So this would be compatible with what's in the IBM PC 5170 AT. The standard that this card uses when it comes to the I/O ports and the way the interface works for the hard drive came from IBM's design in the 5170, but IBM didn't design the hard drive controller. I think they worked with Western Digital to design it, but it's a board that has less large ICs on it and a lot more TTL logic, but it's pretty much compatible. And the standard, or the way this works, the way the software interfaces the hard drives on this is the same as IDE, and I think pretty much every storage device we have now that's IDE compatible, not the AHCI or whatever that is, but if it's the standard IDE compatible, it is compatible with what this card is and what's in the 5170. So a compact flash card, which emulates IDE on the ISA bus, is basically emulating this and the storage medium that was hooked up to it, the hard drives, all through a normal ISA bus connection. It's pretty cool, the lineage of this. This is just another thing that really all came from IBM on the 5170 and just been brought forward all the way till today. And this card, which was obviously in that AT&T machine, yeah, it's just one of them. Oh, there's actually one more thing that I took out. This was the large motherboard. This is the motherboard from the M24, so the 8086 version of the machine, also the AT&T version. It's got the ISA 8-bit slot plus a 16-bit extension. We have 512K plus an additional 128, so 640K on the motherboard. There is the 8086 processor. I'm not familiar with SAB. So they were a licensed manufacturer of the chip. Well, okay, there's another SAB, Siemens. So that must have been a Siemens part. I don't remember. Okay, that's Signetics, I think, and SGS. This is an Italian company that made a bunch of stuff, including the processors as well. So this thing will most likely will have a whole bunch of SGS parts on it. Yeah, it's got a mix of sort of everything, doesn't it? But we can see by date codes on these soldered chips, 1984, that looks like 1985 though. Yeah, 85, okay. 85, 39th week for the floppy drive controller. And there is where the battery exists and trace repair has been done. But you know what? It's nice, it's in the corner. Doesn't look like it really damaged too much else. There's definitely some traces that did get eaten away. Let's check the backside. Yeah, doesn't look too bad. We should actually have some surface mount components. Passives, kind of cool. And I can see this motherboard picks up its power from that video board with those lugs that I guess would push into here, or maybe you bolted it together. So it appears we have a complete board set for the 6300 or the M24, which is excellent because I don't even know if the one I have works. So I have a bunch of replacement boards for that. And then as for this chassis of the M280, I think it was called, the 286 version, it's missing its power supply. Now, unfortunately, this does appear to have sustained either a little damage in shipping to me or potentially was already like this, but you can see that the back case is a little bent. It's steel, and steel is malleable, so probably with some further disassembly, this could be corrected. But the power supply, obviously, I gotta move some stuff here to slide this into view of the camera. The power supply obviously goes in this position. The motherboard takes up all the space underneath, and then the drive cages are here. And I think this thing here, with the A and C, goes in something like that. So you can screw a floppy drive into these holes up into the drive, and then you can screw the bottom drive into that, and then this must kind of clamp in here somehow, and that will hold those drives. And when it comes to the 286 backplane, you can get an idea of the lugs there that interconnect the power between the motherboard and the bottom of the backplane, and maybe there were cables that went from this over to the power supply, which would have been over here. And unlike the other one, which had that special video board that sat in this position, that was the interconnect between the motherboard and the top board, this one just has this small little PCB that connects them together. And now that I look at it, is it possible that this extra 16-bit extension is the same as the ISA? And like you see, the traces just run over here, or maybe the extra signals that weren't on there are carried on this ribbon cable. But as you notice, there are no footprints there for those two extra connectors for the old XT type boards. My assumption is for video, this would just use normal VGA cards. And I am noticing that this slot is damaged. Notice that the contacts are opened really wide here. So I'm gonna stick a piece of tape over there just to kind of remind me that that is bad. Luckily, these are pretty standard connectors, so that can be swapped out. But the back, as you can see, just looks like the M24, totally, except for this gray color scheme. There is the, sorry, it's a little out of focus. It just says CPU 24. It's like a serial number badge, but the badge above it is missing, and there are the ports. On the front, we have a few things that are missing from there. Okay, and on the bottom, AT&T product service. This was written on the sides. This was taped on the sides, I mean. And these badges are there. Made in Italy, AT&T, data processing equipment. That's it, just these markings. Maybe someone can look these up and see if these match any of the other machines. And this is the top lid that I removed. It does have screw holes, like as if you could screw a monitor directly onto it. That's strange. It's a grayish color. It's hard to tell in the camera, but it's a grayish color. On this side, nothing's really there. It does have this connector, which I've seen popped out on my 6300, whatever that's used for. And on this side, that same product service sticker and an asset tag. And then there's the front of the machine. So you can definitely tell that this would have had a cover that flipped down, reset button, some other button, maybe an LED, and something there. Inside, we've got foam that's degraded, and yeah, that's pretty much it. Well, that's gonna be it for this video. I thought I was gonna do some powering up, at least of that Eazy PC motherboard. I still wanna do that, but I'm not gonna do it in this mail call video because it's already gotten kind of long. If you happen to know more about that AT&T PC, like I'm probably just missing something, but if that was just a normal model that was sold, just let me know so I can at least mark it as such and then go try to figure out what I'm missing to maybe assemble a full one of those. It looks like it's an M24/6300. So if anyone has an extra power supply, maybe that's something I can put in there and get that thing working at least, although it's missing that front panel, so that's kind of unusual. And then if this is normal, where you have this backplane that has the 8-bit ISA 16-bit extension, let me know. And then there's the Eazy PC stuff, which I don't even know where it is right now. I misplaced it. There's stuff everywhere in the basement, packing material and everything. So if you had one of those things when you were growing up and you ran into issues with the compatibility or you loved it, definitely let me know. I'd love to hear your stories about your incompatible or pseudo-incompatible machine. Massimo, thank you for sending all this stuff in. This is absolutely wild. It's gonna take me a while to kind of clean up the basement here. And I definitely really want to try to power up that Eazy PC motherboard. Massimo, if you're watching, let me know in the comments what exactly you tried to do, because you obviously could, I could see you tried to get this thing kickstarted. If it didn't work, if the CRT didn't work, or what exactly happened here, because I'd love to know more. But I think, yeah, first step on the Eazy PC is getting it powered up just off like a bench power supply or my ATX power supply, and then using the RGB to HDMI to actually look at what it's displaying, and hopefully just use a normal XT keyboard and not some proprietary thing. As far as the 286 board goes, though, it doesn't look like it uses a standard DIN connector. It's still using a 9-pin for the keyboard. So, oh, I'm sorry I didn't open up the computer further to show the motherboard. I don't know how to take apart the computer the rest of the way. The lid came off pretty easily, but it looks like there's a bunch of screws and stuff like that to get the bottom off. So that'll have to be for a future video. So if anyone knows more about this, definitely let me know. If you want to know more about this machine, then I can do a further investigation into it. And I suppose I could try to open up my 6300 and steal the power supply out of there to put it in this machine to see if it does anything. But as far as that 9-pin keyboard connector goes, if I can use the 6300 keyboard on this 286 machine, then great. But if it's using a AT protocol, then clearly that's not going to work. But all right, well, that's it for this video. Thank you, Massimo, for sending all this stuff in. I look forward to playing around with this. It's just more stuff for future videos, which is awesome. Lots of material. And I really do apologize to anyone who sent stuff in on mail call and it's back there and I haven't gotten it to it yet because, yeah, there's still a bunch of stuff. And I guess that's going to be that. So subscribe, thumbs up. Thanks to my supporters. Names are up the side of the screen. All the usual YouTube stuff. And stay healthy, stay safe, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.